So we've looked at the research. So we've dealt with the top blue bit, and we're going to look at a little bit of the bottom blue bit, and then look at the taking control bit of the green. So that's what we'll do before lunch. And it's all based on this realization that we had, this is how extraordinarily complex Parkinson's is, and how it's a complete whole body thing. So the first thing that completely saying that medical noradrenaline, effect. So they aesthetical to me. Covered what David showed us this triad, just non-movement, shows the years ago. 20, even 20, we're at the early of my Parkinson's. Me to did not know that, but I had more depth that he was the acronym B. So just but overall the deep he would peanut and top. So having that to look at except something had to around my medical suffer with quality for falling asleep dip to and good news about it and kind of thing about that movements realized but I'm sign of Parkinson's no need of myself shouting or laughing weeping out just once so now I don't so anyone dealing with either of those two yes put it up very just the CF sleepiness thinking about I'm like wall with a ability type fatigue come simple again and one of the you can years for
that way. Comfortable. forcing you to overcome that and start you know, start the right
Yes.
cycle and feels.
Thank you. Treatment.
I'm afraid that if I or whatever, I'm in it's making myself become energetic again.
Yeah, next. We were at saved the different really scary. Doesn't care. Pick up people around me. Exercise. Be something. Huge amount that we can do about ourselves. Control over ourselves. Looking, we'll do that. A lot of and three things. All just and say the lecture that blood sugar, but the way that had the Let's Get in May. That's amazing in putting Tai Chi, Pilates, dance and walking. And exercise specialist. Should be walk. Different types of ground. Strengthening. It's out. Yeah. Start getting generating reconnect. Then skills-based exercise. Works just and doesn't have gardening work. Same. So small. Shows benefits for incredible. So this simple. So I could kinds of so we moved on to nutrition.
Can I make a plug? We get and we have wonderful sort of empathy thing.
And all the services that
exercise find that
Thank you.
I just committee are to new no.
Speakers actually
Yes.
exploring.
So now we're in the about nutrition is that we can use so the progression and also I'm very slowly losing weight through other malnutrition. Nutrition. About some this isn't medical and and worse symptoms. Balance. And doesn't spike in so the blood your the I hadn't realised with a lot of neurotoxins are given some every day clean toxins in done and come on basically next love slide. She proposed fizzy drinks, and we're not allowed any chips. So what can we eat? So she proposed a strategy. So the strategy was to increase the anti-inflammatories and the antioxidants that we eat, to increase the brain food that we have, and also our levels of hydration, and to avoid chemicals. And she suggested, and again, this is all in, there's a handout of all of this as well that you can pick up later. Increasing the antioxidants and the anti-inflammatories is delicious, basically. This is one of the reasons why today we've got fruit and nuts on the tables. And the wonderful tray bakes that you've been eating, most of them are sugar-free. So the darker the berry, the greater the antioxidants. Nightshade family, this comes back to the nicotine, because tobacco is a nightshade plant. Sorry, Mary, did you want to say so? Oh. So peppers, aubergines, and tomatoes are also nightshade plants. So the more of those we can eat, the better. Spices and herbs are terrific. One of those particular ones, the curcumin, the turmeric, and the cinnamon and rosemary are particularly good. One of the caveats was buy them organic, because some of the non-organic ones are adulterated with just yellow dye. And some of the non-organic ones that come from China have actually got lead contamination in them. So buy proper, organic, more expensive spices and herbs as you can. I buy my turmeric, actually, fresh turmeric from the Whole Food shop up the road, and it's wonderful and delicious, and I chop it up with lots of ginger and lots of garlic. They also talked about supplements. Now this is something that I've never actually tried supplements properly before, but I'm putting an order in on Monday for these ones and see what happens. The second one was hydration and brain food. Water up to 8 glasses a day. Now, she wasn't specific about the size of the glass, and I do have to sort of balance that out against lots of water and running to the loo more often, because that's one of my non-motor symptoms that I find challenging. But the more hydrated I am, the better my digestion is going to function, the better my brain connections are going to be. And now the next lot come back to the slide that David showed about the caffeine and red wine. Now, caffeine, again, this is be sensible about it. Red wine, be sensible about it. I don't drink red wines, and I'm not allowed white anymore, which is very unfair.
Just out of interest, why not white wine?
Because there's sugar content. Sorry. Yes. Green tea is a wonderful antioxidant, and for those of you who really don't like green tea, one of the good things about this is apparently if the tea bag or the fresh leaves go in, even just for 7 or 8 seconds, that's enough to get the antioxidants into the water without making it too strong. So,
First of all, I know that there's never been able to answer the question to me of what about rosé, which is halfway between. What does that do? Nobody mentions rosé wine.
sorry?
Nobody mentions rosé wine, which is between red and white. Does it have advantages or disadvantages?
I don't know, but my understanding is that rosé tends to be on the sugary side, so probably not a good one to go for. But that's just my own thing, not horse's mouth. Nuts, again, you've got them on the table. Nuts, particularly Brazil nuts and walnuts, they are very good for the brain. And yes, I mean, all of these have to be taken very carefully. If you do have choking aspects, then I would imagine, and I'm making this up as I go along, that ground almonds is probably the way forward. The cooking, olive oil and coconut oil, I've started using coconut oil the whole time for cooking, because if you use any of the other ones, they get, the other oils go into trans fats, and that causes oxidative stress, which causes inflammation, which doesn't do us any good. So fish oil, olive oil, as long as you don't heat it, cold pressed olive oil, as long as it doesn't go above 180 degrees, and coconut oil, which can go to any temperature. The last strategy is avoiding the toxins. So either buying organic or washing it. All the grapes, they weren't organic grapes, but they've all been washed this morning carefully. Limiting milk and dairy. Now this is an interesting one, because one of the papers that came up was about the impact of dairy on, particularly on middle-aged men. There was a correlation between milk and Parkinson's. Now they weren't sure whether this was to do with the pesticides that the cows had been grazing on in the grass, or whether it was to do with the whole thing about uric acid. Because the thing about dairy is that it counteracts uric acid, and uric acid is a good antioxidant. So the more dairy you eat, the more antioxidants you kill. Some fish have got mercury in them, and again, what Heather's Vicky said was, Google it. She wasn't giving us a definitive list, although she did say, be very careful of tuna. So these strategies for avoiding toxins, avoiding adding to the toxins that we already have in our bodies. The pyrethroid and insecticides, they've been around for about, I think they were actually, the PCBs were banned in the 1970s, but they've got a very long half-life. But pyrethroid insecticides are around at the moment. We can use them. You can buy them you can buy them in the shops and the garden centres. So don't. And so what came up was the prudent diet. And it also, I mean, it's extremely delicious, extremely healthy. And one of the things that she said was, just make changes slowly, one thing at a time. The major change that we've made is to move to coconut oil to cook with. We had a pretty healthy diet before, but when things got hard, there were times when nothing would do except double egg and chips. And so I've stopped nipping into the chip shop next door to get the chips and bringing them in and doing the double eggs. I just do the double eggs and I fry them in coconut oil. So nutrition, I think, yes. What did that one say? Yeah. It's very clear that there's a very strong link between nutrition and feeling good. And this isn't just for people with Parkinson's, it's for all of us. Yeah.
I use ginger. It's tasty. You get it in a lot of things. And when I eat it, it just opens up all the tubes.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't...
Ginger.
Ah, yes, ginger's wonderful.
I eat ginger crystallized, without the chocolate on, so it's just crystallized ginger. And it just opens up everything and gives me the power to get on my legs again.
Thank you. Any other nutritional hints and tips? David?
Just one thing, Alison, that you didn't mention, you probably know about, but you didn't mention rooibos or red bush tea, which contains no tannin and no caffeine rather, and little tannin.
Yes, that wasn't something that came up in the presentations that we saw, but perhaps we could have a. We're going to be asking you to, or inviting you to have a discussion at your tables afterwards. So perhaps you could dig into that more deeply then.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thanks.
There's 4 slides here which are about why plant chemicals actually work. And these are much on the same sort of lines as David's ones. But I thought we would put them in, and Helen very carefully helps. That's the overall thing of what Parkinson's misfunction looks like. But these are the different ways in which plant chemicals actually help to attack the different bits that we're being attacked by. Oops, wrong one. Let's go back. So that's the scientific evidence. This isn't just whole wheat sandal kind of stuff. This is deeply scientific work that's been done on why plant chemicals actually make a difference to us and to our brains. So, oops, and even, oh, this is the one. Sorry, whoops, wrong way. There. Right. Oh, and even more. And again, if any of you want copies of these slides, they'll be up on the website shortly. So, taking control of our lives. I loved this slide that Sarah Regari had. She said that over the course of a year, she spends exactly 1 hour with her neurologist. So 2 sessions of half an hour each. And what is she going to do with the other 8,765 hours? And Giselle Petzinger is very clear that managing our symptoms is partly down to the medication, and God bless the medication. And the rest of it is down to ourselves and what we do with managing our symptoms. So that's one of the things that we'll look at now. We'll look at the way in which there's the physical and the emotional and the mental side of this, taking control of our lives. And a lot of it is to do with the choices we make. There was a whole session, a whole half-day session on taking control of our attitudes, taking control of how we approach life. And one of the things that came up very clearly was the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell to other people, and the ones that they tell us as well. So Brian Grant, who is this amazing guy with PD, he was a champion basketball player, and he talked about what happened when he got diagnosed first, that grief cycle, the anger and the denial. And I kept my head in a bucket of sand for about a year and a half before I finally pulled it out and shook the sand out of my ears. And his thing was, he just woke up one morning and said, "What on earth am I doing?" He hadn't told anybody. He'd managed to hide it. And he called it doing the man thing. This guy was about this tall and, real big American basketball player who started up the Brian Grant Foundation. And his phrase was, well, it's a new best friend. I hate it, but I have to get on with it. And the other people were talking about the unwanted visitor, the unwanted guest that we just have to get on with. And he went from embracing it as unavoidable and hating it, to embracing it as a blessing. So his whole thing was, how might I take this and shift it and shift my own attitude and actually start giving back to the community. The next slides, again, I'm going to go through them quite quickly because we've got handouts about them. And this was about taking control of our own lives. And this very much mirrors the work that that Liz and Bill are doing, running the self-management course, which is another one hopefully starting. No, that Liz, sorry? One of the things that she said that really resonated with me was, I can't change the past. All the sort of, well, if I had done this or if I hadn't done that, then maybe I wouldn't have PD now. I just put it on the raft and let it float off down the river. And we'll look at volunteering later on. The research that she was quoting is very clear that volunteers actually are healthier and happier and more engaged and enjoy life better. Bob Kuhn was another person who's had Parkinson's for many years, and he talked about embracing a positive attitude, because not only did it give strength and hope to ourselves, but it very importantly gave strength and hope to everybody around us. And he talked about how he maintained this. And his thing was the need for engagement, encouragement, and inspiration. And he said encouragement is very much the word encouragement with the word cur, heart, at its center. And inspiration, being able to breathe life into oneself and into other people. But finding a passionate purpose, choosing a challenge, going beyond what we ourselves want and need. And basically he said, well, it's the only choice that it's the only logical way to play this card. It's the only sensible choice to make, is to step forward and get engaged with life, to dance with life. Because otherwise, when we slip into the apathy and the depression, but we have a choice. And I suppose that's one of the things that came out for me so much was, I always have a choice. I always have a choice about what attitude I'm going. If I find myself slipping into, I can't be bothered, or feeling sorry for myself, that's a danger signal to me. It's a time I made a choice and stepped into some of this thinking instead. And I couldn't resist this. This was a card that I found in a shop in a small town called Neatarts, and I just thought it was so good. Attitude's the most important. It was a birthday card, and inside, thought it was just lovely. Feel free to choose whatever darn attitude you fancy. So one of the last things was about communication, and she started off with the story of the two wolves. It's a Navajo American Native Indian story where the grandfather is talking to his granddaughter and saying, I've got these two wolves inside my head and they're fighting like crazy, and one of the wolves is full of self-pity and aggression and anger and misery, and the other wolf is full of compassion and love and optimism and hope. And the granddaughter says, which one's going to win? And the grandfather said, the one I feed. And I thought, whoa, what are the stories I'm telling myself about which way I'm going to go forward? So the other thing she talked about were the challenges of non-verbal communication. And I know when I moved into Edinburgh with David, 3 years ago now, and got engaged in this community, I spent the first 6 months or so thinking that everybody disapproved of me and didn't like me because I hadn't really figured out about the Parkinson's mask. And she told the story of the guy in Leatherhead back in 2012 who was watching the Olympic cycle race coming through. And he was watching it with the, just intent on it, and his face slipped into the Parkinson's mask, and he got jumped on by the police, who thought, what's happening? Here's somebody who's not engaged, who's not having fun at this cycle race. He must be a terrorist. And he got arrested, thrown into the back of the van, taken down the police station. He kept saying, I've got Parkinson's, I got Parkinson's. That's what is all this? They didn't let him have his phone call. In the end, his wife got really panicky because he was supposed to be back at his daughter's 9-year-old daughter's birthday party. And she finally managed to track him down to the police station. But he was there for 5 hours. So this whole thing about the challenges of nonverbal communication, when people are expecting one thing and they're not getting that. I know that I have to keep my face consciously animated when I'm with people. And also the challenges of finding the right words at the right time. So one thing she said which really landed with me, it's not the person that's the problem, it's the problem that's the problem. So I'm still not quite sure what that means, but it's one that I'm puzzling over, and it really feels right. It's not me that's the problem, it's my condition that's the problem. So, nothing would be complete without reference to the poster that Bill and I wrote and that Lindsay designed and that we had had up in the poster hall. And the reactions to it were very positive. Everybody loved the look of it, and the people that stopped and spoke to us were all talking about the different groups that they ran as well. Nobody, however, had one that was just for PWPs only. The woman I was speaking to there was a social worker who ran a group, and she was horrified at the idea that we might actually be competent to talk to each other and get a huge benefit from it without somebody there to guide us. But as you'll see on the thing over there, the thing that we particularly value is that learning about good communication within the group normalizes our sense of who we are. And that helps to empower us and leads to better communication. So the whole thing goes round in this wonderful virtual circle. Sorry, was there a... So, I suppose the learning for me was that the unwanted visitor doesn't rule my life. I'm the one who rules my life, and I always have choices. And the importance of working with other people and of being clear about what my needs are and transparent about what my wants are and listening to what other people are saying is needing as well. And I just thought I'd put in a little plug there for the Quality of Life group and for the side-by-side course and the carers group as well. So, taking control of our treatment. One of the things that came out very clearly was that it's important to listen to the patient's and the carer's voice. Now this, one of the other things that was talked about was there is an inherent power imbalance between the medic, or the health professional, and the person with Parkinson's. And this is where the move from me being a passive recipient of the drugs and the benefit of the knowledge to being an active participant and pushing back, as it were. Bastian Bloom talked about the patient as teacher and the doctor as the partner. Not that the patient is the partner of the doctor, but the doctor is the partner of the patient. And Jane Bush talked about research that she had done about what we actually want from our consultants. We want them to build trust with us. We want them to listen. We want them to take time. And one of the things that I'm finding is that I can actually, by going in with my list, and by I can actually say, I need the time to go through this, and build active listening and shared understanding. After my very first appointment with Dr. Davenport, at the end of it, I thought, I stuck my hand out and said, "Thank you very much. I think we can work together." And he went, "Oh, I hope so." And it just shifted the balance so that we were equal. He brings his expertise, his extraordinary expertise in neurology and movement conditions, and I bring my deep and extraordinary expertise in myself. So, and that one came up in that was wonderful. The patient will never know how much will never care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So we've got about just over 10 minutes till lunch. And what I was going to suggest was that in your tables, you actually have a discussion about some of the things that we've been talking about here, about what you can do for yourselves, what you can do to help other people, how you shift attitude and how you shift your eating, your exercise regimes, what you found works. And then on each table there are bits of paper and pens and so forth. And then we'll gather all those together after lunch. So 10 minutes just to have a proper conversation, not just sit listening to me